On February 1, 1943, B-17 aircraft from the 414th Squadron took off from a base near Biskra, Algeria, to attack German-controlled ports in Bizerte and Tunis, Tunisia. This was also the day an event occurred that the crews aboard these flying fortresses would never forget. After completing their mission, while returning to base, the squadron was attacked by German Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters. One of them dove in as if willing to sacrifice itself to bring down the entire squadron. The collision tore apart the rear of a B-17 with a particularly remarkable name, All-American. This was a hazardous situation. In the worst-case scenario, the aircraft and its entire crew might have been buried in the harsh North African desert's scorching daytime and freezing nighttime sands. But something truly miraculous happened. True to its name, All-American, despite having its tail nearly severed and a large, gaping hole at the rear, the B-17 did not crash. It continued to fly defiantly in the sky. After more than 90 minutes, despite severe damage to its control systems, the B-17 crossed the vast desert and landed safely at its base in Algeria. Not a single crew member was injured. This event became one of the most famous stories of the B-17's resilience during World War II. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was introduced in 1935, designed by Boeing to meet the United States requirement for a long-range bomber. It became the backbone of the United States 8th Air Force's strategic bombing campaign in Europe. From 1942 to 1945, the B-17, alongside the B-24 and escort fighters like the P-51 Mustang, destroyed Germany's aviation industry, playing a significant role in the Allied victory in World War II. And today's video will tell the story of the B-17, one of the most mass-produced flying fortresses in military aviation history. A bomber with an exceptionally sturdy airframe, powerful engines, formidable firepower, and numerous advanced technologies that enabled it to fulfill its mission with outstanding success. The birth of the Boeing B-17, from prototype to legend. In August 1934, the United States Army Air Corps initiated a plan that would reshape the landscape of aerial warfare. They set out to design and build a new multi-engine bomber with ambitious specifications. It needed to carry a ton of bombs at a speed exceeding 200 miles per hour and have a range of 2,000 miles. Boeing engineers Gifford Emery and Edward Curtis Wells began their preliminary work on June 18, 1934, creating what would later become the Model 299. Actual construction started on August 16, 1934, just 8 days after receiving the government's request. Boeing took a bold step by investing its funds to build the prototype. The Model 299 brought revolutionary changes to aviation. This all-metal mid-wing aircraft had a wingspan of about 100 feet, a length of 70 feet, and weighed approximately 15 tons. It was powered by 4 Hornet engines, each delivering over 700 horsepower. Boeing incorporated and added several groundbreaking features. The landing gear and tail rudder were retractable to improve aerodynamics. Before the Model 299, most aircraft had exposed landing gear, which obstructed airflow. Retracting the gear into the fuselage significantly reduced drag, increasing speed and flight efficiency. The aircraft was also equipped with pneumatic brakes, marking the first time a United States aircraft used such a system instead of traditional mechanical brakes. Pneumatic brakes were a breakthrough in aviation technology during the 1930s, and their inclusion on the Model 299, the B-17 prototype, was highly notable. This braking system used compressed air pressure, typically air, to activate the brake mechanism, unlike mechanical force as in bicycles or hydraulics used in some later aircraft. The basic components of the pneumatic brake system included an air tank, which stored compressed air at high pressure, typically 80 to 120 psi, continuously refilled by an onboard compressor. A control valve in the cockpit, activated when the pilot pressed the brake pedal, allowed compressed air to flow to the brake assembly. Air lines delivered the compressed air from the tank to the brakes at the wheels. the brake actuator converted air pressure into mechanical motion. When air entered, a piston pushed outward, pressing brake pads against a brake disc or drum, creating stopping force. Thanks to this pneumatic brake system, the aircraft could stop more effectively upon landing, especially on short or uneven runways, which was critical for a heavy aircraft. The Model 299 employed a semi-monocoque structure, where the outer skin bore most of the stress, combined with a lightweight internal framework. This provided advantages like a robust yet lightweight airframe, resilience to combat damage, and suitability for assembly line production. The prototype also featured advanced flight equipment, including an autopilot system. Autopilots were rare at the time, and this system alleviated pilot workload during long flights, particularly in formation or overextended missions. It also played a significant role in the survival of the all-American B-17 mentioned earlier in the video. Boeing's chief test pilot, Leslie Tower, flew the first flight on July 28, 1935. The aircraft proved its worth, achieving an average speed of 233 miles per hour from Seattle to Wright Field, easily surpassing the Army's speed requirement. The Model 299 competed against the Douglas DB-1 and Martin Model 146 at Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. Observers were impressed. Boeing's prototype outperformed its competitors in every aspect except cost, which was twice as expensive. Although authorities were pleased with the new design, the B-17 program nearly ended due to a tragic accident. On October 30, 1935, disaster struck at Wright Field. Major Ployer Peter Hill, chief of flight testing at Wright Field, took the Model 299 on its first flight. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft pitched, crashed, and burst into flames. The accident claimed the lives of both Hill and Boeing test pilot Leslie Tower, who was observing the flight. Investigators discovered a simple but fatal error. The crew forgot to unlock the gust lock, a device securing control surfaces when the aircraft was parked. The destroyed prototype could not continue in the competition, so the Air Corps contracted Douglas to produce 133 B-18s instead. However, senior military officers recognized the Model 299 potential and sought ways to proceed. Through some procedural maneuvers, 13 B-17s, later called Y-1 B-17s, were ordered for real-world testing. This decision saved the Flying Fortress program and helped Boeing avoid financial ruin. The only positive outcome from the tragic accident was the introduction of the pilot's checklist. This checklist is a list of steps and items that pilots and crew must carefully verify and perform in sequence before, during, and after flight. It ensures no critical steps are missed: unlocking controls, checking tire pressure, fuel levels, and electrical systems. Pilots don't rely solely on memory, especially under stress or fatigue. The crew operates to a standardized process, minimizing errors across individuals. Before the 1935 accident, aircraft were simpler, and pilots could easily recall all procedures. But the Model 299, the B-17's precursor, a large, complex aircraft with multiple systems, proved human memory was no longer reliable. The accident highlighted that forgetting a single step could cost the aircraft and crew's lives. As a result, the United States Air Force, and later the entire aviation industry, mandated checklists as an essential part of every flight. Subsequently, fields like medicine, nuclear operations, and even surgery adopted checklists to enhance safety. The origin of the Flying Fortress name for the B-17 was somewhat serendipitous. Richard Williams, a Seattle Times reporter, saw the Model 299 the day before its first flight. Its imposing, massive appearance caught his attention. In a photo caption, he called it a 15-ton flying fortress due to the numerous machine guns protruding from its fuselage. Boeing quickly recognized the marketing potential of the nickname and trademarked Flying Fortress. The name captured the design's core spirit, a heavily armed bomber capable of defending itself deep in enemy territory. Today, the prototype is often called the XB-17, but this designation only emerged after the accident. The official B-17 name was assigned in January 1936. Despite a rocky start, the Model 299 launched one of the most successful military aircraft programs in history. The Flying Fortress redefined strategic bombing and played a pivotal role in the Allies' victory in World War II. Engineering marvel. The B-17 Flying Fortress became legendary because its advanced engineering set new standards for military aircraft. The B-17 introduced innovations that completely transformed aerial warfare. These advancements enabled the Allies to conduct strategic daytime bombing missions with remarkable results. The B-17's all-metal, robust design marked a fundamental shift in aircraft construction. Boeing engineers developed a semi-monocoque airframe that distributed stress across the entire structure rather than concentrating it on a few load-bearing components. This novel approach made the B-17 exceptionally durable. It could withstand severe combat damage and still remain airborne. The aircraft gained fame for surviving harsh combat conditions. B-17s often returned to England with their noses blown off, tails heavily damaged, and wings riddled with holes from flak. These flying fortresses landed safely even when one or two engines failed, with the remaining engines working overtime to keep the aircraft aloft. This remarkable resilience saved the lives of many crew members during the war. The bomber utilized advanced aluminum alloys that perfectly balanced strength and weight, a critical factor for an aircraft required to carry heavy bomb loads over long distances. The design also incorporated redundant systems, allowing the aircraft to function even after sustaining significant damage. The Wright Cyclone engines were the lifeblood of the B-17's performance. The B-17G was powered by the Wright Cyclone R-18-2097, a 9-cylinder radial, supercharged, air-cooled engine known for its reliability. These engines produced 1,000 horsepower at 2,300 revolutions per minute at sea level and 1,200 horsepower at 2,500 revolutions per minute during takeoff. In emergencies, they could deliver up to 1,380 horsepower using war emergency power. Each engine was equipped with a General Electric B-22 turbocharger capable of spinning at 24,000 revolutions per minute. This turbocharging system was essential for high-altitude flight and showcased American engineering prowess that other nations couldn't yet match. The Wright Cyclone engines proved their worth beyond the B-17 program. First built in 1927 with 575 horsepower, aircraft manufacturers favored these engines for their fuel efficiency, durability, ease of maintenance, and high power-to-weight ratio. By the peak production of the B-17G, the R-18-2097 had become an engineering marvel. The B-17's high-altitude capabilities revolutionized warfare. The B-17F could reach 37,500 feet, and later models performed well at altitudes between 25,000 and 35,000 feet, depending on bomb load. Flying at these heights placed the bomber out of reach of most anti-aircraft guns, giving it a significant advantage. The Flying Fortress transformed air combat with its high-altitude capabilities. The aircraft's exceptional ceiling led United States Air Force leaders to adopt high-altitude precision bombing as their primary strategy against German targets. Key B-17 variations and improvements. The Flying Fortress evolved from its early prototypes into production models through combat lessons and technological advancements. Each new variant brought critical improvements that enhanced the bomber's survivability and combat effectiveness in the perilous skies of Europe. The B-17A marked the beginning of transforming a prototype into a combat-ready aircraft with significant upgrades from the original Model 299. The first production version, the B-17B, featured a larger rudder, new wing flaps, an improved nose, and more powerful R-18-2051 engines delivering 1,200 horsepower. The B-17C received upgrades to several components, including the more powerful Wright R-18-2065 engines. The aircraft now included critical combat survivability features, self-sealing fuel tanks, and armor plating. Defensive armament consisted of only 5 machine guns, as designers believed the bomber could outrun enemy fighters. The B-17D continued these upgrades, but early combat reports revealed serious weaknesses. The initial flying fortresses in combat had a significant blind spot directly behind them, making them easy targets for enemy fighters. Crews improvised defensive maneuvers by swinging their aircraft to allow waist gunners to take turns firing at pursuing fighters, a risky tactic that proved ineffective in tight combat formations. The B-17E introduced a complete redesign that transformed the aircraft's combat capabilities. Unveiled in September 1941, this variant featured a rear fuselage extended by 6 feet compared to earlier models. The most notable change was a much larger vertical stabilizer with a distinctive dorsal fin extension. Boeing engineers added a manually operated twin 50-caliber tail turret to address the rear blind spot. Other defensive improvements included a Bendix electrically powered turret with 2 50-caliber guns behind the cockpit, rectangular waist positions replacing the older oval windows, and an electrically operated Sperry ball turret beneath the fuselage. The B-17F, first flown in 1942, further refined these features. The most significant change in the F model was the replacement of the complex framed nose with a smooth 1- or 2-piece plexiglass nose cone, providing bombardiers with greatly improved visibility. This version retained the E model's defensive setup, though later variants added a major upgrade: a remotely controlled chin turret, the first powered turret to protect against frontal attacks. The B-17G became the ultimate flying fortress by combining previous improvements with key upgrades, making it the most formidable version. Production began in 1943, and the G model was recognizable by its Bendix-designed chin turret housing 2 50-caliber machine guns. This final production model carried 13 50-caliber Browning machine guns, each firing 750 rounds per minute, and capable of hitting targets up to 3,500 feet away. The complete defensive setup included 2 guns in the chin turret, top turret, ball turret, and tail position, plus single guns at cheek positions on both sides of the nose, in the radio compartment, and at the waist positions. The G model needed this additional firepower because Luftwaffe fighters began frontal attacks on bomber formations more frequently. The lethal chin turret and improved top turret coverage made the B-17G a formidable target in these head-on assaults. Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed built 8,680 B-17G Tekes, making it the most numerous flying fortress variant. These aircraft led the 8th Air Force's bombing campaign across Europe, particularly after February 1944, when P-51 escorts could finally protect these aerial battleships all the way to their targets. Defensive systems that saved lives. Enemy pilots nicknamed the B-17 the Flying Porcupine when confronted with its formidable defensive firepower. The unprecedented defensive armament and clever formation tactics of this legendary aircraft made the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress one of the hardest bombers to shoot down in history. B-17s flew in meticulously planned combat box formations to maximize defense. The bombers were divided into 3 staggered groups, high, medium, and low, forming a 3-dimensional defensive shield. A 54-aircraft formation spanned about 600 yards long, a mile wide, and half a mile deep. Other squadrons flew in similar formations spaced 6 miles apart. This ingenious arrangement created overlapping fields of fire. A 54-aircraft combat wing could unleash 648 50-caliber machine guns simultaneously, producing lethal firepower extending up to 1,000 yards in all directions. Enemy fighters found this wall of lead nearly impenetrable. German fighter pilots learned to respect these heavily armed fortresses. Luftwaffe studies showed that attacking from the rear exposed fighters to combined fire from tail and ball turret gunners for 18 seconds. German weapons experts determined that downing a B-17 required at least 20 mm cannon hits from the rear. gun camera footage revealed that even seasoned Luftwaffe pilots hit their targets with only 2% of their shots. A pilot needed about 1,000 rounds to land enough hits to destroy a bomber. The FW-190, Germany's best fighter, carried only 500 rounds, making the odds particularly daunting. One German pilot described dodging the concentrated fire of a bomber formation as trying to stand in a shower without getting wet. The German Air Force responded by developing head-on attacks, reducing exposure time to just half a second, though this required exceptional pilot skill. The B-17's defensive systems proved so effective that Germany developed specialized weapons to counter it. The 30mm Mk-108 cannon and 21 cm air-to-air rockets. Remarkable B-17 survival tales. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress achieved legendary status in World War II. Countless stories circulated about its ability to survive damage that would have destroyed any other aircraft. The B-17, just a snap from the 100th bomb group, returned with only 3 engines functioning. The maintenance crew counted over 700 holes in the rear fuselage alone. They stopped counting after finding more than 800 holes across the airframe. A B-17G from the 398th Bomb Group showed similar resilience over Cologne. A ground rocket struck an engine, ricocheted into the fuselage, and exploded, yet the aircraft returned safely. Another Fortress landed on November 6, 1944, with a large hole from anti-aircraft fire torn through its fuselage. Lieutenant Lawrence Delancey's B-17 faced disaster when anti-aircraft fire hit it over Cologne. The explosion killed the co-pilot and destroyed the nose. Delancey piloted his damaged Fortress back to England without oxygen, maps, radio, or most instruments. His legs were exposed to freezing air at nearly 30,000 feet. A silver star honored his extraordinary feat. The B-17G, smashing time, added another chapter to these survival tales. The aircraft Bella landed near the village of Altenheim in January 1945 after sustaining heavy damage. The entire crew survived this remarkable feat. These survival stories cemented the Flying Fortress as one of the most resilient combat aircraft in history. Beyond bombing, Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress did more than drop bombs. This renowned aircraft performed specialized duties during and after World War II, demonstrating its reliability. The B-17 first flew maritime patrols before dominating Europe. These powerful fortifications guarded Caribbean, South Atlantic, and Eastern Pacific maritime lanes. They protected Panama Canal routes. Long range and durability made the aircraft suitable for submarine hunting. B-17 crews sank 11 German U-boats. Some Flying Fortresses were fully remodeled into VIP and transport carriers. Before its 1943 conversion, General Douglas MacArthur's personal transport was a B-17E. The team disassembled armor and weaponry to build a kitchen and living quarters. They installed an unusual drop-down door with rear stairs. Another B-17E cargo plane was the XC-108A. Ceiling bomb bay doors and modifications allowed it to transport supplies over the Himalayas to Chinese B-29 sites. A converted B-17G model 299AB became the Shah of Iran's executive transport. After World War II, the B-17 advanced science. QB-17 drones were used to research how nuclear explosions damaged airplanes during the Bikini atomic testing. The black and yellow planes helped test new air-to-air missiles like the Sidewinder. The Navy upgraded 31 B-17 Jedocumentary into PB-1W Jedocumentary with an APS-20 Sea-Sarch radar, establishing the first airborne early warning station. Innovative airplanes had enormous radar domes under their fuselages. AWACS systems were built using their technology. The B-17 in popular culture. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress left an impact after World War II. This iconic airplane symbolized boldness and technological advancement, enthralling people worldwide. 12 O'Clock High, 1949, is the most accurate B-17 film. The Memphis Belle became famous after 2 films. A 1944 documentary by WWII included action footage from the crew's 25th flight. He flew 5 combat flights to record. The 1990 film starring Matthew Modine and Harry Connick used 5 of the 8 airworthy B-17s. Technical documents and personal anecdotes were inspired by the Flying Fortress. The B-17 Flying Fortress story by Roger Freeman and B-17 in action by Steve Birdsall stand out. John Shaw painted stunning paintings like Pray for Mercy about a December 1943 encounter between a critically wounded B-17 and Luftwaffe pilot Franz Stigler, who chose compassion over a kill. Only 4 B-17s fly today. Only Sally B at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford flies outside the United States. United States-wide restoration teams work. The B-17G Lacey Lady, or Milwaukee gas station bomber, is meticulously disassembled, inspected, and refurbished. Piccadilly Lily 2 from 12 O'Clock High, Wonder Woman, and Black Sheep Squadron is being restored at the Planes of Fame Air Museum. The story of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, one of the deadliest bombers in history, ends here. What are your thoughts on this aircraft? Leave your comments before watching another video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.